Yo, welcome back to a brand new video here on the Shovel Squad, and today I thought I would do a video talking about what I think are the top 5 best decks going into Arlington. Of course, Arlington is happening this weekend, and the meta is shaken up quite a bit after this past weekend, where we saw 3 different regionals by 3 different decks winning each regional, which were kind of wildly different. And I think the meta is in a really interesting spot right now. We even saw Lugia kind of evolve a little bit past what it was from Arlington. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about what I think are the top 5 best decks going into Arlington and what you want to expect going into Arlington regionals, because the format is very crazy right now. There's a lot of different decks in the format. The format is a lot different than it was before, and I'm excited to talk about it. Before we do, of course, if y'all are going to go on to enjoy the video and want to show your support on the Shovel Squad, leaving a like in the video would be greatly appreciated. You can also check out our sponsors down below, like Atlas Collectibles. If you get anything at Atlas, of course, you can use our discount code TSS12 to save yourself a 12% discount, which is a lot to save. You can also check out your playmat down below. If you want to get yourself a custom-built playmat, you can check them out. And if you do that, you can also use our discount code TSS5YP at the checkout to save yourself a 5% discount. And you can also check out Pokex Word down below, too, if you want to complete daily puzzles. Good little brain exercise. Start the day off. And let's go check out what the top 5 best decks are going into Arlington Regionals, in my opinion. Coming in at the number 5 spot, I have actually chosen Mewtwo Control. I think Mewtwo Control is in a pretty good spot going into Toronto Regionals. One of the big things with Mewtwo Control is how good its matchup spread is right now, and not many decks can counter it. Now, I would put Mewtwo a lot higher. Obviously, it won Toronto, and I think that it's still a very good deck. I think the thing is that Drapion is going to start seeing a lot more play now. Drapion is a pretty good counter to the Mewtwo V Union, of course, as they will bench a Drapion, deal with the Miltanks and all that, and then by the time the Mewtwo comes out, the Drapion will be able to attack the Mewtwo. Stuff like Lost Zone will definitely start adapting to the Mewtwo by adding in Drapion, and they have the Mirage Gate, making it very hard for Mewtwo to work in those matchups. And with the popularity of Drapion, I really think that it's going to hinder Mewtwo's performance, but I still think Mewtwo Control is good, and I think it is still a great deck. It still has a pretty decent time against something like Lugia, and I think with the right player and maybe even the right tech cards, Mewtwo Control is still a very good pick going into Arlington Regionals, and I still have it here at the number 5 spot. Coming in at number 4, I have gone with Palkia. Now, Palkia definitely is on the rise again, thanks to Jake Gearhart's performance at Toronto, and I really do think that Palkia is good right now. Obviously, its matchup spread is pretty good, and Palkia does have room for a lot of tech cards. The big one, of course, is that Articuno emergency jelly combo being very difficult for decks to counter. Now, the big thing is that I do think that Paralysis is going to get teched for going into Arlington. A lot of decks are going to expect the Paralysis, and if their decks didn't really have a good way to counter Paralysis, they're now going to have that option available. But Articuno Jelly is still a really good combo, and when the opponent doesn't have a way to counter it, then the Articuno Jelly can still win you a lot of games. I think Palkia is the best way for Articuno, because against Lugia, you can still use Palkia to knock out the Espeon Vs before they evolve into the Vmax, and then you get to activate Articuno. The Drapion is still really good within the deck. Of course, Jake Gearhart did say the way to beat Mewtwo is you go, knock out all their Miltanks. By the time the Mewtwo comes out, you go Sobble, attach, Star Portal, Thornton into a Drapion, and knock it out. So Palkia is one of the decks that does get to abuse Drapion. Also helps you out quite a bit, of course, against Mew Vmax, which is still going to be pretty popular. Palkia can also tech around with other different water Pokemon. Obviously, another big one could be the Ice Cube with the Wash Energy combo. Ice Cube double Wash might be a really good combo for Palkia, as it does help you a lot against Lost Box and Reggie. So that is another combo that might start seeing a lot more play going into the Arlington Regionals. But I do have Palkia at number 4. I think Palkia is really good again, and I think that the Articuno Jelly build is great, and I definitely have it up here at number 4, as it's a great deck, and it's nice to see Palkia kind of resurge back into the meta, as a lot of people thought Palkia was dead. Coming in at number 3, of course, is going to be Mew Vmax. And of course, there are 2 different builds of Mew Vmax right now. You do have the Fusion Energy build of Mew using the Lost Vacuum and the Path of Peak, but then you have the straightforward Meloetta build. And I think the Meloetta build is still probably the way to go for Mew Vmax. I think the Meloetta build still has the most amount of plays and power over the Double Turbo build. The Double Turbo build also falters to like different weird tech cards and can be a bit harder to pilot over the Meloetta build. And the Meloetta build still does good against Lugia also. Meloetta can be a very annoying attacker, and with Palkia starting to pop back up in the meta, I think that actually gives Meloetta even more reason to shine, as of course when you're playing against Palkia, Meloetta is very good in that matchup. And if Palkia is going to start becoming popular again, I think the Meloetta build gets a lot stronger. And I think the Meloetta is definitely, in my opinion, the better build, but I do think the double turbo Path build is still obviously good. And honestly, if we're going to call it that, I think both builds of Mew are probably both at number 3 respectively, not just one or the other. It's probably just both builds at number 3. Both kind of play differently and have their own different strategies to winning the game. But I do think that they both deserve a spot here at number 3. Mew is still very good. Mew is still Mew. And definitely do not sleep on Mew, as it is still going to be popular. And people are still going to play it regardless. And I still think it's at number 3, as it's still a pretty good deck in the meta. And it gains some decent new matchups. And coming in at the number 2 spot is going to go to Lost Box. Now, again, like Mew, there are multiple variations of Lost Box. Of course, you do have the Rayquaza build, you have the Sableye Cramsard build, and then, of course, you have the Kyogre build of Lost Box. I think both builds are all pretty valid, outside of maybe Rayquaza being the worst of them all, but I do think that Crams, Sablezard, and Kyogre are both pretty good. Now, Lost Box going into number 2, it still has a lot of good matchups, and honestly, I think it just really will adapt to the format. The big thing is, I think Lost Box will start teching in Drapion in their decks, as Drapion will help counter the Mewtwo, because, of course, you can either Mirage Gate to the Drapion or manually attach to Drapion if you're playing Sableye Cramsard, and you're going to force the opponent to have to get lucky with their Crushing Hammers in order to stop the Drapion, as Lost Box can easily beat Mewtwo if the Mewtwo doesn't come into play, and even when it does, of course, if you just have the Drapion, you should be good. Now, I do think the Kyogre build that, of course, Grant Manley and Caleb Gettimer both used to get top 8 in Toronto is still maybe the best way to go about playing Lost Box. Kyogre still rewards a lot of high skill play, and it a lot of the time wins you games by checkmating the opponent when you're Sableye, you know, checkmating your opponent with the Sableye and the Manaphy and all that good stuff. So I still think that the Kyogre build is the way to go. Snorlax, I think we'll start seeing more play too. The Snorlax is really good going into the Stoutland. Obviously, with a Choice Belt, you can one-shot Stoutland with Snorlax. And I do think Snorlax will be a little bit better also going into most Lost Box decks, even playing multiples of it by playing 2 of them. I think it's going to be the way to go with Snorlax. The Snorlax is just really good into the mirror, really good against other Vstar decks, and of course, really helpful versus Stoutland, which I don't think Stoutland is going anywhere going into Arlington. The Zekrom is probably the most, like, cuttable card from the Lost Zone deck. I think that it might either go back to Raikou, or they might just play a different attacker overall, because I think the Zekrom has been figured out, of course, with Lugia now teching for the paralysis. I don't think Zekrom is really good anymore, more of a surprise factor than anything else, so it might end up going back to the Raikou over the Zekrom. But I do think that Lost Box is in a great spot, and when Lost Box just adds a Drapion to the deck, I think they're going to have an easier time versus not only Mew, but also Mewtwo V-Union, and that's how you're going to beat the control deck, is, of course, with the Drapion. And Lost Zone is one of the decks that gets to abuse Drapion. Of course, when they have the Mirage Gate Drapion play, it makes it very easy to check the Mewtwo V-Union when it comes into play, and it also slightly improves your Mew matchup a little bit, which, once again, Mew ain't going anywhere, and that's why I got Lost Box up at number 2. I think it will adapt and improve, and I think Lost Box definitely still the second best deck in the format right now. And of course, nobody's surprised, at number 1, we have Lugia Vstar. Lugia Vstar is still the deck to play / beat going into Arlington, and it even got a lot more improvements going into Arlington, mainly because Isaiah Bradner and Rahul Reddy's Espeon Vmax Lugia build seems to be the best way to go about it. I think Espeon is very good in Lugia and kind of makes it broken, because I know there's the Virizion build of Lugia that did well too at Stuttgart, and I think that that is still a decent archetype. However, the Espeon is just better general coverage for the Lugia deck. It counters more counters. Like, the Espeon not only counters the paralysis plays, but also counters stuff like the 2 different Evil Talls in the format, and just other weird cards that can be a bit of a problem. The Lugia, Espeon completely counters them, and I think Espeon is going to be the way to go playing Lugia from now on, as it just is such a good card against most of the counters that people try to come up with to beat Lugia. Now, I do think stuff like Path to Peak are going to maybe start coming back into popularity, because Path is very good against Lugia already, but it also shuts off Espeon, which is really good when you're shutting off the counter to your counter. That could be a very big deal now, of course, so Path might see more play. So Lugia might have to adapt to Path potentially becoming a problem, or if somebody else figures out a really good counter to Espeon Vmax that is out there, I do think that will be something Lugia has to account for. But I do think Lugia Espeon is now the optimal way to play Lugia from now on, because I do think Espeon is just generally the best card to pair with Lugia for teching to beat the counters, as it's just so good against all the counters. It just has better general coverage than other cards that exist out there that Lugia would play to counter the counters, and I think that Espeon is really broken in the deck, and again, is now, in my opinion, the optimal way to play Lugia, and will be the Lugia deck to beat. Of course, Lugia just ain't going anywhere. It's still the deck to beat. Your deck still has to be Lugia. Will Lugia be the highest percentage deck in Arlington? Most likely will be, yes, and you have to be able to beat Lugia. Even if you would say, oh, my Mew Vmax or my Lost Box deck easily beats Lugia, you still gotta beat Lugia going into Arlington regardless, and I still think it is the best deck, and the Espeon build is the optimal way to play Lugia going forward. And I'm sure somebody might come up with a tech card that actually counters Lugia and gets around Espeon. That is going to be very interesting to see if that ends up being a thing, because I'm sure that we're going to see some really cool, spicy things happen in Arlington. So I'm excited to see what people come up with to try to beat this Lugia Espeon deck, which seems to now be the best way to play Lugia going forward. I guess some quick honorable mentions to mention, obviously Arc Duraludon, Giratina, and Regis, and even the other decks that won the other regionals. Of course, the Flaffy Box deck and the Vikavolt Palkia deck are all decent little honorable mentions. I don't think Flaffy Box is actually that good. It's probably just a meme more than anything else. But I do think that Vikavolt Palkia deck is worth experimenting with. It seems to be pretty decent in all honesty, and definitely something that could be experimented with. If it does well in Arlington, it has a shot at maybe cracking like a top 10 best decks in the format, but not quite the top 5 best decks. I think Duraludon and potentially even Regis just barely missed the list. I think Arceus Duraludon would be my number 6 spot on this list. But I don't think Arc Duraludon is worth putting in the top 5. It's still a decent deck, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's top 5 worthy just yet. But that'll be it for me on today's video here on the Shovel Squad. These are my opinions on what I think are the top 5 best decks going into Arlington Regionals, and what decks you have to watch out for, and what decks you have to beat going into Arlington. Let me know in the comments below if I missed any decks. What do you think of my ranking? Do you think it was out of order? What are we all thinking here? I would love to hear down in the comments below. I'm excited to see what comes out at Arlington, and I'm sure we're going to see some more spicy decks pop up at Arlington, and I cannot wait to see that. And that'll be it for me on the video. If y'all enjoyed today's video on the Shovel Squad, make sure to leave a like in the video. If you haven't subbed already, make sure to click that subscribe button down below, and also make sure to check out our sponsors down below. And that'll be it for me. I'll catch y'all on another video here on the Shovel Squad. Peace out.
The Shuffle Squad is proudly sponsored by Atlas Collectibles, the best place to buy any trading card game product online. Visit atlastcg.com, and at the checkout screen, make sure to use code TSS12 to save an unbeatable 12% off your entire order. Atlas Collectibles will ship your product anywhere in the world, so make sure you're taking advantage of the 12% savings with TSS12. And if Pokemon is not your thing, don't worry. Go to atlastcg.com and see all the other amazing trading card game products they have there to offer.
The Shovel Squad is partnered with PTCGO Store to provide our community with the best access to Pokemon TCG codes. They have codes available 24/7, instant email delivery, and you can save 5% off by using code TSS5. If you're a YouTube member or Patreon supporter, you'll have access to a special code that gets you 10% off. So what are you waiting for? Use code TSS5 today and save 5% on your next order of codes on any codes available at ptcgostore.com.
Pokex Word, the best place to get your fill of Pokemon-inspired puzzles. New puzzles are posted every day, and they recently launched a new Guess That Pokemon puzzle, which is a ton of fun to play. Go check them out at pokexword.com, and be sure to follow them on Twitter for your chance to win a ton of PTCGO codes every month.
Check out the Late Night Series Season 6, brought to you by myself, Zach Lesage, and the Shovel Squad. We're going to be running a bunch of sick events for the Pokemon community, and they start on August 30th. So one thing you might be noticing here is that there's an EU time and an NA time. We have one at 12 p.m. Eastern, which works out to about 5 p.m. in London. And then we have one at 7 p.m. Eastern, which should help out a lot of players on the West Coast play in this event. That being said, we still have a lot of cool things going on. Expect similar prizing that we've had for other Late Night Series events. Expect better staffing, expect better tournament experiences, and of course we do have a stream going up for this season as well, and I will be streaming the event on Twitch. That being said, we have the whole season up on the Play Limitless website. Late Night 51 all the way through 70 runs until we hit the Invitational on November 5th. So check that out, sign up today, and support Zach Lesage Events and the Shuffle Squad. See you there.